In July, Henley in the UK hosts a traditional boat festival, and while it's been many years since I last attended, I thought I'd give it another look this year. I parked my car in a rugby field and walked down towards the festival site. At first glance there didn't seem to be much going on, but as I walked around the site I realised that there was a lot on offer. There was a tea room, lots of boats on the river and on the bank. A local pub, the Crooked Billet from Stoke Row, had set up a big bar area. There was extensive lawn areas for people to sit on, other places to get food and drink, and there were also traditional boating crafts going on, and you could buy vintage clothing. If you wanted, you could even buy a hovercraft. There were a number of boat sellers around the place, and they were displaying some truly stunning and beautiful boats. And if you needed anything for your boat, there were numerous suppliers of all kinds of bits and pieces for your boats. To keep the kids entertained, there was a small fair area, and it was very dog friendly down there. Lots of dogs around. In fact, Lady McAlpine put on a few dog shows which allowed people to show their dogs off. There was even a show for the maddest dog on site. How that was judged, I don't know. But I was there for the boats. The first boats I looked at were the Steamboats. This is a 1930s boat that was retrofitted with a steam engine, and there was also an incredibly small little steamboat called Whisper. It must be very hot on a summer's day on these boats with the engine fired up. Also at the festival was an 1896 umpires launch. This was one of the first, if not the first, umpires launch built, and the design spec for it was that it must have a top speed of 25 miles per hour and produce minimum wash. These boats were built so umpires could follow crews during rowing regatta. This boat was immaculate, wonderful woodwork and a glorious steam engine. While at the festival I decided to take a cruise on the Steamship Alaska. I've seen this boat on the river many times, and it was great to be able to get on board and go up the river. We left the dock and we headed towards Henley, and it was a great way to see the boats that were at the festival from a different angle. We headed along the river up into town before returning back down the regatta course and heading for Temple Island. We turned around at Fawley and went back to the festival. On the way back I saw some more boats that were moored up along the bank for the festival, and I saw Whisper happily chugging along the river. One of the highlights of the festival is the coming together of the little ships. Now, if you're not familiar with the little ships are a collection of boats that took part in Operation Dynamo in 1940 to rescue the British Expeditionary Force from Dunkirk in France. These plucky little ships went across the channel and rescued the soldiers whilst under fire from the beaches around Dunkirk. A truly remarkable story, and it was great to see these boats all decked out in their finery with their signal flags and the special flag flying that showed that they were a little ship. The smallest little ship there was Moonraker, which was this little sailing vessel which was towed across the channel and was used as a platform. These little ships are absolutely remarkable. They've been lovingly restored by their various owners over the years, and some of the owners take it very seriously, dressing up in vintage clothing. Their stories are truly remarkable, and as they parade up and down the river during the festival, you get to hear all their stories over the tannoy. One boat that was near the little ships that caught my eye was the St. Joan. The St. Joan was used by the RAF during World War II to rescue downed pilots in the English Channel. But the little ships were truly stunning. It was beautiful to see them and to hear their stories about what they did during Operation Dynamo and how they'd been rescued by people after the war and restored to their former glory. As part of the festival there was also a flyby by a hurricane, and it was great to see a hurricane flying over the little ships in Henley. However, the thing that I was really at the festival for were the boats, and there were some truly stunning boats around. Beautiful slipper launches, cruiser boats, holiday boats, you name it, some wonderfully maintained and preserved wooden craft. There was also some working boats around. There was a large barge and also a blacksmith on a narrowboat, which was good to see, and a narrowboat tug. One boat that caught my eye was a houseboat. This boat I've seen on the river many times, and I thought it was a reconstruction of a boat that was used by a photographer called Taunt, who took a number of early photographs of the Thames. However, the owner explained to me that they built this boat, and it wasn't until much later they discovered they had actually built something that looked remarkably like Taunt's barge that he used to do his photography. One thing I did find a little odd to see at the festival were these boats. These are Starcraft, and these boats were very popular on the river when I was growing up, so I view them as part of my childhood, but to sort of see them there as traditional boats I found quite surprising. And it's not all big boats. There were small rowing boats around. This is the Gig, a Thames double gig which was built in 1883 for the Vicar of Streatley. A beautifully maintained boat. There was another example of a rowing boat, and this one was called Annie. This one was built in 1901. Again, beautifully maintained. And there were some other small boats at the festival. This is a duck hunting punt from just after the First World War. The long silver thing on the front, believe it or not, is the gun. And these were very popular after the First World War until they were banned. Another surprising boat at the festival was a sailing canoe, and this one was built in 1881. Sailing canoes were a short-lived craze from about 1865 to about 1900, peaking in the 1880s. I bet they were quite a fun craft to get around in, but they do look rather odd. And then there was the smallest boat I saw at the festival, a coracle. This is a small, round boat that is moved by the use of one paddle and is used for fishing. Now, if you're not into boats, there was also old bicycles to look at and a collection of cars. Now, with the cars, again, I had a problem because most of the cars are on display I remember from when I was a kid. These old Land Rovers, for example, and this Morris Minor. One of my relations had a Morris Minor, and I can remember being driven around in it. There was an old Mini. I personally don't consider this an old Mini. My friends used to drive this type of car. And there were some military vehicles on display as well. So there were lots of things to look at. It wasn't all about boats down at the festival. And the largest vehicle at the festival was a steam engine, which made a truly remarkable noise. It sounded like it was living and breathing as it sat there idling. Now, if you like cars and boats, then the festival had the answer for you. They had some amphibious cars on display, and these were quite striking vehicles, quite interesting to see. And these all came about, of course, from amphibious vehicles in the Second World War. One of the vehicles was unique. This was built by a chap who wanted a camper van that he could also take on the water, and it was remarkable to see these vehicles going up and down the river. It was quite weird to see them. It was odd. It looked wrong. And what was even more fun was watching them trying to get out of the river. It wasn't easy, and some of them really struggled. The boat displays continued until about 5 o'clock, and the various stalls closed down around about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then the Crooked Billet Trad pub started to get going. They'd been serving food all day, but in the evening they had bands on. And what I particularly liked was their poster really highlighted the sort of atmosphere and the feeling down at the festival. I loved the fact that it said things started at 6:30 p.m. ish. There was no hard and fast timetable for things happening down at the Trad Boat Festival. And the bar was very popular. The food was good, the music was good. Although rather annoyingly, they did have one mistake. If you can spot the mistake in this photograph, please leave a comment below. So, my time at the festival, what was it like? Well, I went for all 3 days. I had a great time watching the boats, looking at the boats, speaking to people about boats. It was a fun day out with a lot of stuff to do, and it was a great way to spend 3 days. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.